There's a new MTE on the way, and it's making a ton of noise across college basketball and college sports. Could the new Players Era Festival be a game changer in the college sports landscape? Could it forever change Feast Week in basketball? Could it save bowl games in college football? And could college baseball even follow their MTE model for a new event?
Only time will tell, but what we do know is two SEC teams will be competing in Las Vegas in this inaugural event. Also, the sport of basketball says goodbye to one of its legendary figures, the logo himself, Jerry West.
Plus, the United States men's soccer national team is playing in the Copa America tournament this week. We're going to give you a roadmap to understanding the tournament by comparing every team in Copa America to an SEC basketball team. That's today on the Hoop Southbound Show. And it's good to be back. Maddie, how was running the show this week without me?
I think it was solid. I got my buddy Jay on to talk the future of NBA hoops through the draft. It was a pretty good time, but it is great to have you back, David, because I am atrocious when it comes to editing a podcast. So apologies to anybody who watched last week's show, saw a little of the bumps and bruises. And I think there was like 2 minutes of just solid black at the end of that video. So if you made it to the end and got that, I'll get that cleaned up next time.
It happens. I mean, we all got to learn how to edit at some point when you're making a video. So, it's one of those. I'm going to sit down and work with you a little bit more on it. But, thank you for doing such a great job and coordinating that show, getting a guest, and everything that you did while I was very, very, very busy over the last week. And what the viewers don't know was actually 2 weeks we recorded prior for that one episode. Well, this week we're talking about the Players Era Festival. So you may have heard about this a little bit earlier in the offseason, but what the heck is it, the Player Era Festival? This is a multi-team event, or MTE, to be played during Feast Week, much like Maui or Battle for Atlantis. But what makes this event different is the event is also going to include $1 million of NIL payouts to each participating school. What's more, players involved will have future earning opportunities through long-term NIL contracts through this event. That's right, we're putting NIL money up for grabs in a tournament in Las Vegas. Now, we'll get into the controversies surrounding this event, but certainly the prospect of this tournament is incredibly attractive for schools trying to get a little extra recruiting help and mitigate some of the donor fatigue that's occurring in college sports revolving around NIL donations. This is a chance to bring in some money to your school's NIL collective and help your program for the future and take care of players you have now. The tournament would be unique is that the NIL collective for each participating school would be paid that $1 million. Additionally, significant NIL opportunities believed in the neighborhood of another million would be awarded exclusively to the winner of the winner event bracket. That's going to be a 2 bracket format in the format going forward. We'll explain a little bit more of that. The money would then be distributed to the athletes by the collectives. The athletes, while they're in Vegas, would also be required to participate in multiple off-court activities to earn that NIL money. Maddie, what are your kind of thoughts initially when we're talking about this tournament and the impact it's going to have?
I think to a point, this is kind of what everybody was thinking is going to lead to, anyways, with NIL coming in. You've got these big events with a lot of sponsors, a lot of donors probably investing into this, possibly even the city of Las Vegas or the businesses within Las Vegas contributing money. So, I think it's a good way to bring people in, especially when you're bringing in big names. You're going to have a lot of fans show up to support. So I think it's probably a mix of a way to bring more NIL to the table, but also to bring kind of that tourism aspect of possibly like an NCAA tournament to Las Vegas, especially if people are going to be there gambling on it.
Yeah, I mean, like there's high profile games like crazy going on. We know Vegas is a destination during March Madness with people, sports betting throughout the NCAA tournament. That's a big deal. But you're talking about getting that extra money, and NIL has created a disparity between schools. Playing in a tournament can help a mid-tier NIL program, not necessarily a mid-tier basketball program, but like one that's a mid-tier NIL collective with larger with making them a larger program. This also, I like the fact that this doesn't impact the fans who are constantly, and you know this as a Razorback fan with Arkansas Edge, constantly being advertised to about putting up donations for NIL and more money to help NIL. It's really crazy when you think about like the collective economy right now and how grocery bills have doubled, but still your school is asking you for 10, 15, $20 extra to just go to help pay for student athletes. It's kind of absurd, and that's what's created so much donor fatigue. And even in the SEC, there's disparity in college basketball in these collectives. You have programs like Arkansas with huge NIL collectives dedicated solely to their basketball program. And then there are programs who are only dealing with like $1 million to give out. And those programs can easily evaporate all that money in a single season because trying to get athletes into your program. On paper, it comes across as a very good recruiting tool for these programs that try to help get some extra money into these schools. And from that perspective, I totally get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you're looking at schools that are larger that have already committed to this event, when you're talking Houston, Alabama, that already has a decent backing for their basketball program. I'm interested to see how this plays out and what schools end up signing up. If there's going to be kind of a fight to get invited to this, and how many MTEs in the future are probably going to try and do the same because they're going to want these high profile schools to bring in fans, to bring in more money to wherever it's going to be. What me that may that be Atlantis or Maui or any other MTV. We've seen several in the Carolinas, New York. So I feel like it's kind of going to be a fight for, hey, come watch us play here. We're going to give your school money, but we want you to give us more.
We're going to jump into that just a little bit more because I think your point is exactly spot on about what I think the future of this event will kind of look like. But that'll be more for the controversy section because there's a lot that goes into that. So I want to come back and circle around to that point. Well, let's talk about some of the teams. We know Alabama's going. That's one of the schools from the SEC, Texas A&M being the other. But here in the SEC, Nate Oates shared some thoughts on the Player Era Festival. He said, "We are always going to support our student athletes at the highest level and do everything we can do to help them succeed. The Players Era Festival aligns with those objectives. In addition to playing quality opponents in an NCAA tournament-like atmosphere, the trip should provide our players with access to NIL opportunities. We're looking forward to being part of that inaugural class of participant." Obviously, Nate Oates highlighting a ton of those positives that we were just talking about, which are the positives essentially there. And there's a lot of upside for this event. Maddie, some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama is scheduled to play Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars in their first game of the event. My first reaction to that is,
That's a heck
you
of a
know,
game.
that is a heck of a game. But also, I'm really curious as to why they wouldn't put them on opposite sides of the bracket in hopes that they would beat everybody out and you'd keep those fans around for longer. But also, when you're looking at Las Vegas, you don't exactly just want to schedule an open-ended trip there, come back when your team's done. So I think maybe they're
But you
kind of
should
going
be
in
guaranteed
hopes of,
3 games.
hey, come watch this fantastic matchup in round one and stay for the rest of it. So, you know, I, I'm interested to kind of see how this is going to work out, especially in terms of the bracket. Taking a look, we also have Texas A&M on the other side, so they'll be playing a Brian Dutcher in San Diego State, who has made some good runs in the NCAA tournament out of the Mountain West.
Yep, certainly a good team. It's a little weird that Alabama and Texas A&M are going to both be playing. By rule, teams in the same conference aren't allowed to face each other in an MTE except under extreme circumstances. So the event has separated them out into a two bracket format for this season, and it'll be interesting to see how they address that because they're supposed to expand this tournament by 10 more teams next year. So we'll see what their plans are for that in the long run. But the Tide and the Aggies will be joined by Rutgers, Notre Dame, Creighton, and Oregon. A lot of P5 teams in that event, obviously trying to draw the biggest crowds for this event they can, which leads us exactly where we're going next. These are some of the things that like people have been talking about with this tournament. I'm going to go through these the controversies, and there are multiple layers to the controversy. So I'm going to break it down really into three parts here. So, number one, could this possibly violate NCAA rules? Now, obviously, the NCAA has been a little weak, but there is a rule in college sports that does not allow pay for play. You are not allowed just to hand a student athlete a check for playing a sport. Now, how true that is one of those things that's more of a rule in a rule book and less of a rule in application. We all know the dirty secret about what NIL is. So the work around has been that the schools that are going to be involved they've come up with workarounds to get these things done and making these student athletes participate in NIL events. Now, when this tournament was initially announced, I took the article and I emailed it to my NCAA law professor. And I was like, hey, alarm bells have gone off in my head when I saw this. This sounds like pay for play. What's going on here? And he responded and told me that the way that this tournament was initially brought to everyone's attention, that, yeah, it straight up looked like a rules violation from the NCAA. Without those workarounds, this tournament wouldn't even be feasible. So it's one of those things right now of like it's a little sketchy, right? It's coming off as a little shady. It's like a toddler kind of saying, "I'm not touching the cookie," even though their hand is hovering right over the cookie. That's exactly what it is. So, Maddie, what do you think about the way that they're just like, yeah, we're gonna make them do NIL opportunities, but straight up, we're gonna give some schools $1 million.
So funny enough, the first thing that kind of came to mind when I was taking a look at this for any of our followers, watchers, listeners that may have played NBA 2K, you go do like the little simulation of an event or an interview or something, and then you can go pick up your check or whatever
Yeah.
afterwards. That was my thought. So they're gonna go to this, shake some hands, kiss some babies, sign some autographs, and make it be kosher, I guess. But like I said, I think this is kind of where we're heading with NIL. Um, Schools are gaining the edge, and I think there's going to be some people that are against it because it does very much sound like pay for play. But eventually, that's the direction that it's heading. I think we're going to see a lot of big name schools, a bunch of blue buds competing in these MTEs to add that NIL incentive into the contract of signing up for these events. I think depending on where it's located, like I said, which companies are putting up monies for sponsorship, these MTEs could be huge moneymakers in the process. So why shouldn't there be an incentive for schools if they're bringing that much money in to a town, especially like Las Vegas, when you can have, your team be represented by a certain casino or certain attraction or something along those lines. If they're just maybe filming them on the coaster of the stratosphere or something, using that as a commercial and NIL incentive. So I mean, I think there's definitely workarounds to it, but I think that's kind of where we're heading anyway with NIL when we bring it up.
You said one key important word in there that's going to lead us into our next point, and you said the potential to make a lot of money. And that's what we're about to jump into here, because the reality in like there is potential here to make a lot of money, but the reality is the way that we've seen these things work in the past, that isn't actually the case.
Mhm.
Now obviously this thing could be run completely different, and there's a lot of different opportunities, and Las Vegas is a tourist destination, but like let's get into, is this thing actually going to work? I need to give some background on this just to give everybody like a picture of what it looks like. There are a lot of people around college sports who are straight up don't think this is going to be sustainable, and that teams might not get the money that they're promised to them. In the past, there have been events, solo games, 2 or 3 games where events have promised to pay schools a couple of $1,000s to play at a neutral site in some event, and then those schools are only getting a fraction of the money that was promised to them. And this problem isn't isolated to smaller schools. If you listen to the Ion College basketball podcast this week, they were talking about this happening to schools like Duke, Gonzaga, big time programs not getting the money they were promised. The Players Era Festival is promising these NIL opportunities, $1 million to each team that comes and plays, and $1 million more to the winner. That's totaling up to around $10 million in this year one without the NIL opportunities being paid out. Then this tournament is supposed to expand to 18 teams 2 years from now, meaning we're looking at $20 million. Like that's a ton of money. Traditionally, even the best MTEs don't make those kind of profit margins. The highest profile regular season event hopes to earn around $1 to $2 million in profits. That's like Maui and Battle for Atlantis and Empire up in New York. So you're talking about $10 million in the hole starting out year one. To be profitable, you need to turn about 12, 13, 14 in revenue or whatever. How is that going to be sustainable? Especially because it's a holiday weekend that competes with some of the biggest college football games. We're talking Alabama versus Auburn, here in the SEC for one of them. You can also talk about Florida taking on Florida State and all these other huge college football games that are going to be taking place across Thanksgiving weekend. And then you're also talking about the Dallas Cowboys are playing. The Detroit Lions are playing, and the whatever Thursday night game is on Thanksgiving from the NFL. And that eliminates a ton of people and families, especially who are not planning on traveling, and their travel plans include going to grandma's house for Thanksgiving and require a lot of people instead to travel to Las Vegas to turn money. Like that's a crazy notion. It's different when you're talking about Maui, which has like what, a 10,000 person gym that they're trying to fill on people who on a trip to Hawaii to go see their favorite team. It's a lot easier to fill that event and then make a TV deal with ESPN than it is with a, 3 large arenas in Las Vegas. That you may or may not even have a chance to fill up. And I just mentioned that TV portion. This event doesn't have a mainstream TV deal yet. It's supposed to be on a streaming platform, which I'm going to guess is probably going to be Paramount Plus because of the ties that the ties that the event has to CNN Broadcasting and the Turner Media Group. But we don't know which one that's going to be. And it's streaming platforms haven't been extremely super profitable as of yet. Disney Plus, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Warner Brothers Discovery, which is Max and Discovery Plus, have reported total combined losses in excess of 18 billion with the B, since 2020. Last year, Fox reported the average number of viewers at a college basketball game was under 1 million viewers. That's not bad, but not going to generate a world of cash for a single regular season game. And for multiple reasons, college basketball viewership has been down for 15% on average per round in the NCAA tournament this year. We'll get into that in another episode because that's actually a really fascinating study of why it's down. But where's the money going to come from? Where's this money? This is why, like, a lot of people are worried that some teams might not get paid. Now, there's a counter to this. The event is backed by Redbird International Media Investments and a subset of Redbird Capital Partners, a multi-billion-dollar investment firm. Now, Redbird IMI is an investment consortium majority funded by the United Arab Emirates. So the people behind this have money. But I've said it before on this show, and I'm going to say it again. It is not illegal to break a contract. Quote my contracts professor in law school. And if there's no profit, what's to stop a team, or what's stopping someone from paying? And I think the courts will have, if you think the courts are going to have your back on this, the law might be on your side, but litigation is expensive. And if you go down a route where litigation becomes demanding, getting your liquidated damages might become more expensive than just cutting your losses. And that's a real possibility. And if you're thinking that, well, my athletic department is smart, we're going to get our money. Do you not think the people at Duke were smart? Duke, like, I'm going to say that word again, Duke, or Mark Few at Gonzaga, or other teams that happen to, have this happen to them. I mean, how is this supposed to be sustainable for 5 years? Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen. Maybe everyone keeps their word, but I would be concerned that there's going to be some talking about this. And I'd make sure you get some airtight contracts that guarantee those liquidated damages and everything else. This is a worry point for me. As a famous actor once said, I'm leaving with something. So, it's a little concerning how this goes, especially because profit margins just have not been there for MTEs. Maddie, what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a steep bag to grab. And when I first heard about the MTE, my thoughts immediately shot to where is all this money coming from? I mean, you can profit off of these tournaments, like you said, but making that much in profit sounds nearly impossible. My assumption is there's probably going to be a long list of private investors, possibly, like I said earlier, casino investment based on where it's happening. Also, the opportunity portion makes me weary to think, while they may bring in some profit for players, how much will they actually get, or will it just be a possible long drawn out contract with whatever company is providing this NIL investment.
Yeah, and like I said, at least it's backed by this trust, and that gives some reassurances to schools getting their money. But like I said, there's a history of this happening across college sports where teams go play and they don't get the money they were promised to their program. So I would be a little bit concerned. I would definitely be hesitant to be the first class of teams involved in this event. I think Alabama could be taking a risk, and you know what? At least it's going to be high profile. At least it's going to be this huge event. And these games are going to be against teams that are going to help you in the NCAA tournament. So if nothing else, bottom line, you're probably going to get a little bit of cash, even in the worst case scenario. And you played some good teams to boost your NCAA tournament resume. So that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, everybody keeps their word, money's paid out, you don't have to go to court and all this other stuff, and everything goes perfect. This event goes off without a hitch, and everything's great. That's the best case scenario. So like there's a world of possibilities, but like I said, there's skepticism around people who are really into college sports, and I would be a little scared, maybe not scared enough to where I wouldn't year 2 or year 3 try this out. And one of the things I was thinking about with this is that what I think might end up happening is that year 1, you take your losses, right? You take your losses, but you made a lot of noise and you showed how good this event can be for the players and everybody else. You generate a lot of interest and a lot of people watch it at home during Thanksgiving. Year 2, you're already bringing in some good teams, it looks like, for year 2. And that's going to be a much larger audience because you're talking about an 18-team event, something at the size of the PKs out in Portland that are held every 5 years. And that could be a big one. And then year 3, I think this is the ultimate goal. You're going after, like you were talking about, Maddie, go after those blue bloods. You're going after North Carolina. You're going after Duke. You're going over Kansas. You're going after Kentucky. You're going over a list of the top 25 biggest brands in college basketball. In the SEC, that's Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas. Those being massive, massive brands. Alabama just outside that list, right in the top 30. Those are huge brands that you could bring in for revenue and TV. And that's just in our conference. There's other conferences to go address to, too. Go talk about UConn. Go talk about Villanova. Those are big brands coming out of there. West Coast, you go grab UCLA. Maybe Eric Musselman's got USC going really good. That's another Los Angeles school in a huge media market. Like those would be the long-term goals. Arizona would be another good team out there out west. And you'd find those teams and you'd get them to participate. And that would bring in huge, because don't forget, the most watched college basketball game last year, women's or men's, was or regular season, was North Carolina Duke. That game never loses appeal. Never loses appeal. When you get two blue bloods playing each other, never loses appeal. People want to watch that game. So there's that was your most viewed event. Best rated event was, of course, Caitlin Clark and the was the Big Ten championship, for women's championship. That was the most viewed regular season game last year. But or the highest rated one. Yes, that's what the word I'm looking for. I'm getting my TV terminology a little backwards here. But point is, blue bloods draw in revenue, and I think that's what your goal is year 3, and maybe you're down profit after year 2, but maybe you're just investing for year 3 to see who you can get in and showing your solidity as being a good team. All right, so let's get to the third part of this controversy around this tournament. Could this kill all of the traditions that we've grown accustomed to? Would teams opt out to play in events like Maui or Atlantis to go play in this? And the answer seems to be, unless those tournaments adapt, yes. And here's why. Now, we have to assume this thing's going to be successful for this to work, but take this season. Creighton was originally scheduled to play in Battle for Atlantis in the Bahamas. They signed a 3-year agreement that they were going to play this season in the Bahamas. They breached that contract to play in the Players Era Festival. The prospect of playing in that tournament was simply more attractive than playing in the Bahamas. And they figured a buyout was going to be better than playing in Atlantis to her playing in Las Vegas in the Players Era Festival. So if this is successful, other MTEs are going to have to adapt their model. And regardless, this could have huge impacts on events like Maui, which are located in which is located in a lower population area of Hawaii. It's not in Honolulu. It's in a very tiny gym in the Maui area.
Yeah, I think we see how this year goes with the players area and see how MTEs plan to compete. Like I said, I think this is kind of the direction we were all heading in eventually, maybe seeing, is it Maui Jim, the
Yeah,
sunglasses
I forget
that
what it's called, but it's like the
ran the Maui Invitational? Did they start putting up some NIL money for, teams that make it to a certain point, or an incentive for like each round or something like that? But I think, like I said, this is the direction we saw NIL heading. And I think this festival is, writing the next chapter of the NCAA book. I think we see, if we see some profit here, I think it's going to look a lot more competitive on which teams go to which events and what kind of payout they're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, these are the things that people are concerned about. Breaking into tradition, money, players not getting what they deserve, and all sorts of things like that. And the kind of controversy that's already surrounding NIL a little bit from the fans' perspective. But these are the controversies, but don't get me wrong, there's a ton of positives for doing this as well, because it's a lot of money to build some programs, and it could help a lot of programs out. So we'll see how that goes long term for this event. It's obviously one that is shaking up college sports. And like I said, imagine the impact if this works. Bowl games could try to do this to keep their relevance. You're also talking baseball may do something like this for their events that they hold in like February and March. So like we could see something like that happening as well. It could be a very, very big world changer in the world of NIL in which we live in now. All right. So this week, the sport of basketball lost one of its greatest icons. And I do literally mean icons. Jerry West passed away at 86 years old. West was one of the biggest names in the game of basketball all time. He was an NBA championship player, 14-time All-Star and Finals MVP, won an MVP on a losing team. He was that good. NBA scoring champion, 4-time defensive player of the year. He was in college basketball, he was a 2-time SoCon player of the year coming out of West Virginia. He tied the NCAA 5-game tournament record of 160 points. That's 32 points per game, and led all scorers and rebounds in every West Virginia game, including 28 points and 11 rebounds in a 71-7 loss to Cal in the NCAA tournament final. We're not done. That's just some of the highlights of Jerry West as a player. He became the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers after his playing career with them, and led them to 3 NBA playoffs in 3 seasons as a head coach. And then he became a front office executive for the Lakers under Jerry Buss. He is responsible for helping bring in players like Magic Johnson to the Lakers and ushering in the Showtime Lakers dynasty in the 1980s. That was really the era that started the modern NBA. He was responsible for helping make former Kentucky Wildcat Pat Riley the Lakers head coach. That was just the 80s era. He also brought in Kobe Bryant and LSU's Shaquille O'Neal to the Lakers. He also hired Michael Jordan's old coach, Phil Jackson, and which he led the Lakers to more championships. That ended up laying the foundation for the Lakers to win 3 straight NBA finals from 2000 to 2002. He won 8 NBA finals as an executive and was 2-time executive of the year. Never won executive of the year during the Magic Johnson days. He was rewarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2019. He had nicknames such as Zeke from Cabin Creek, Mr. Laker, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Outside, and of course, the logo. The nickname of the logo coming from that he is the NBA logo. The basketball player on the NBA logo is based off a photograph of Jerry West. Maddie, I know we're too young to appreciate the Lakers in the 1980s outside of documentaries and one really darn good HBO show. But we grow up in the 90s and 2000s, and Lakers basketball was huge after the era of the Bulls. I think when you look back on those years, we can appreciate the impact Jerry West even had on me and you as younger fans.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those, obviously we didn't get to appreciate Jerry West in his prime as a player. Or like you said, any of the 80s outside of, our shared love of Showtime. Um,
Great show.
but, Jerry West, like you said, helped usher in, I think, the current era of basketball when you brought in Magic, when you had, the great clash of the Lakers against the Celtics. Um,
Oh,
and
he hated the Celtics. That man hated the Celtics. There's a running joke that he died literally to make sure that he didn't have to see the Celtics win another NBA Finals this year. Like that's how much he hated the Lakers.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Jerry West obviously had a
Celtics not good.
ginormous impact on basketball. We probably wouldn't know who he was if he didn't, being that far removed from being a player. But like you said, an excellent executive, made the NBA what it was today, or assisted in it at least. Just a truly devastating loss for all of basketball.
It really is. I mean, we're talking about a player who's top 20 all time. I didn't mean to say, by the way, Celtics. He hated the Celtics, not hate the Lakers. Obviously, he didn't hate the Lakers. But yet we're talking about a player who's top 20 of all time, has had a huge impact on the sport, even lived here regionally, and chose Memphis as a place to live post his career and everything else. Jerry West is just a huge icon around the sport. And a name that's so larger in life when it comes to basketball, if you know your history. It's just really sad when you think about like the last couple of years, last couple of weeks. We lost Bill Walton a few weeks ago. Now we've lost Jerry West, and it's really devastating. We also lost Bobby Knight, to start last year. There's names around college basketball that are truly legendary that are passing right now, getting into their later years of life. And it's a loss for the sport, but I think it's also a chance for us to all remember and honor these a game we love, and these people who've had massive impacts on this game. And I've just brought, I'm sure he brought a lot of smiles in Los Angeles over the years with that team winning as many championships as it did. But obviously, kind of a salute to Jerry West and all that he did. And I hope his family is doing okay. And I wish them the best and nothing but love. But absolutely legend of the game, somebody you have to talk about no matter what in these circumstances, because Jerry West, like I said, top 20 player and probably one of the greatest GMs to ever impact the game of basketball.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things that has kind of surfaced that a lot of people are um, reposting since his passing is the quote in one of his interviews where they were asking if he was a dog. He said, "No, I was a wolf. I ate the dogs."
Love it. It's a great quote. That's a great quote.
And if there's nothing else that embodies Jerry West, that is it, 100%.
He was 100% intense. So, he got after it every single time. So, gotta love that. So, pending the end of the NBA Finals and College World Series, we are slowly creeping into the dog days of summer where there's not much sports on. Well, at least for most of y'all who only watch American sports, which is why I'm here to broaden your horizon until the NBA Summer League and Olympic basketball gets started this summer. For those of you who are longtime listeners of this show, I'm a pretty big soccer fan. And I think most of you know that because I've dropped little things throughout the years or the last couple of years about soccer, like talking about the FA Cup and how, for instance, and how the SEC tournament should model the FA Cup. And that would be a really good way to do the SEC tournament. But, little hints like that. And starting this week, United States men's national team is playing in one of the biggest and best international tournaments in the world. No, not the World Cup, Copa America, or the American Cup in English. In fact, the U.S. is going to be hosting it, even though this tournament is normally played in South America. This is a big tournament, y'all, with great teams. And as Americans, you have a quality team already to invest some rooting interest in with the U.S. team. So in that spirit, and applying my random soccer knowledge, which is just a love sport for me, today I am going to build a guide for you comparing those Copa America teams to SEC basketball teams. It's kind of goofy, I know, but like I said, huge soccer fan. It's just kind of fun because it's a great week of sports, and it's a fun one. And Maddie, I even texted you. I was like, I got to get to know more soccer. I got to find more friends who are soccer fans. Because like literally the U.S. is going to be playing in Kansas City, and you were like, "I'll go," and I was like, "Do you watch the men's national team? Like, how rare that is to find somebody."
I mean, if it wasn't on a weekday, I 100% would. But I enjoy soccer. I'm getting to know a little bit more about it because of, my niece playing, my interest in Ted Lasso, and now Welcome to Wrexham. So, it's gaining on me. It's definitely something I want to get more into, especially where we're at, because I feel like in other places in America, it's kind of gone through the roof, but we're still pretty much here stuck on football and your main sports, football, basketball, baseball.
Well, here's the thing. We have a lot of listeners in the Northwest Arkansas area because that's where we're from. So if you ever get a chance to go to a soccer game up in Kansas City, that's a good experience because Kansas City is very much a soccer town. It's probably there's a reason the U.S. keeps coming back to play in Kansas City because those fans show up. Also during the World Cup, they'll pack the Power and Light District and have fans just going crazy, and they'll live stream them during the World Cup and the Gold Cup and things like that. So that's a really good city to go see a game in. Dallas is also a good one, and so is Philadelphia. Those are really good areas to go see a game if you're in any of those areas. But Kansas City is one of the best to go see a game at. And I took Avery to her very first soccer game during the Gold Cup to one of the group play matches in Kansas City, and I believe that they call it Children's Park now. When I was at one point, it was Livestrong when Lance Armstrong's organization had the sponsorship rights, but it's where Sporting Kansas City plays. This time they're going to play in Arrowhead. That's how big this tournament is. They're playing in Arrowhead Stadium up there when they place Uruguay. So let's go through this little guide I got here, so maybe you can get some introduction to who these teams kind of are and where they kind of stand if you're new to soccer. So let's start out with Argentina, current World Cup champs. Florida would be the team I would compare them to. Got a couple of championships, just like the Gators. One name has really come out and become legend on this team: Lionel Messi for Argentina and Billy Donovan for the Gators. Obviously, that's a coach and a player, different situations, but one name really has encapsulated them lately. And they got a group of players that look like they're going to be better every season moving forward, just like the Gators for their future. So Florida, that's my comparison for Argentina. Peru, I got them as Vanderbilt. Never won a championship, never been to a Final Four, but have done well in the past, and you expect them to at least get close to making the big dance. Peru has never made a Final Four like Vandy. Vandy has made the Elite Eight. Peru has made the quarterfinals in the World Cup, and you never know. They could be surprising in a certain year because they're kind of overdue to be a really good team. So Purdue and Vanderbilt is my two. For Chile, I got Alabama. They both have had promising teams and recently those teams have been pretty darn good. But they're both have only got one Final Four. Chile's only been in the Final Four teams in the World Cup once. Alabama made the Final Four last year for the first time, and they both have the color red involved in their nickname, Rojo for Chile. But very good teams that have been consistently getting better and moving up to the top of their conference every year. For Canada, I've got Ole Miss. Not a lot of history, not a team you normally expect to be great, but most of their neighbors are normally better. But out of nowhere, they both got a lot better recently, and they now have a team. They now are in a place where they're beating teams they should, and you're waiting for them to have that breakthrough moment. So that my comparison to Canada is Ole Miss. For Mexico, I got Missouri. Never made a Final Four, and at one point they were one of the most dominant forces in their conference. Missouri back when they were in the Big 12, and you've seen from me and Maddie's power rankings from Mizzou. It's kind of hard to tell what you're going to get out of this team next year because you have different thought processes on them. But so they got some players, but there's questions maybe around who's coaching those players right now. So it'll be interesting. That's my closest comparison for Mexico and their situation. Obviously, I'm the one who's more optimistic about Missouri next season compared to Maddie. All right. For Ecuador, I've got them as Texas A&M. No Final Fours, but a difficult team to play, and you expect them to be somewhere in the top 25, but are normally hanging really around the 30 mark. And kind of just expect some scrappiness out of them. Venezuela. I would have made Venezuela Ole Miss just because you just wouldn't expect to see Ole Miss in the NCAA tournament historically. You wouldn't expect to see Venezuela in the World Cup, but recent trends have kind of changed that. So I'm going to leave this one blank because basketball in the SEC has gotten a lot better. So there's really not a good comparison to just how not good Venezuela soccer has been. And so I'm going to double somebody up later on this list. Jamaica, I've got them compared to Georgia, a team that's trying to get through, trying to get so much better, but just can't break through yet. And they've done some promising things that make their future look bright. But can they get there this time? Can they get there? Will they get there eventually? So Georgia to Jamaica in comparison. Our Team USA, got them compared to Tennessee. You got a team that's never won it all, but they've made some decent runs. You got really talented players, and maybe you're looking soon at who that next coach is going to be to take you to a next level when the current coach's tenure is up. You expect to make Sweet 16s now, but you know you can make Elite Eights. But can you get to a Final Four? Talent's there, the support is there. Can you do it? And you're really tired of your rival just kind of hanging that one thing over your head about the fact you haven't broken through yet. So for Tennessee, I'm obviously talking about Kentucky. For the U.S., it's Mexico, Mexico and England. So like, really like Tennessee basketball. It's like, come on, I know you can do this. Like, just that you're holding on, just waiting for it. Uruguay, I've got that compared to, of course, my alma mater, Arkansas. They won a championship a long time ago, and they're very proud of it. But it's been a minute, and a team you'd expect, though, normally to be in the top 15, but sometimes they just have a bad year and let you down. And they've also had a couple of good long-term stretches, and there's just kind of a couple of lulls in their history too. So Uruguay, is a good comparison to Arkansas. It's like one of the better teams coming out of CONCACAF, but like, come on, you can be better. All right, so for Panama, I've got South Carolina. You had this one magical season, and you're trying to get back to that. Last year didn't look too bad, and you're definitely better than expected. It wasn't even that long ago. You were one of the better teams in your conference, but nobody expects you to necessarily bounce back. You just want to get out there and prove everybody wrong about your team, even though your team on paper kind of looks less talented than it previously did. But you're a team that wants to go out there and prove everybody wrong about what they're thinking about you. All right, for Bolivia, I've got LSU. At one time, you were a pretty darn good team. You got some history, but homie, what happened? What's going on? Now you've turned into kind of the punching bag for everybody else in your conference. You saw some improvement last year, and maybe things are starting to turn around for you. So my comparison is to Bolivia is LSU. Brazil, this should come as no surprise to anybody. Kentucky, you got the players. Everyone expects you to be good. You got a good ranking always. You never expect to be outside the top 25. You got championships, you got history, and you've also got a few moments you're embarrassed of, like losing to St. Peter's. And for Brazil, that was getting absolutely demolished by Germany a few years ago in the World Cup. But hey, next year's got the potential to be a good year, whether you're actually going to be that good or not. But maybe you're not, but maybe you're always having a tough time accepting that things have changed and a lot of teams are getting closer to you in comparison, but you're still the brand and you're the big dog everybody talks about. And that's kind of where Brazil's at, very similar to Kentucky. I actually thought that one fit pretty nicely. All right, for Colombia, I've got Texas and Oklahoma. I doubled up this one again. Historically, there have been, you guys are normally pretty good, but you've never won a championship. In fact, you've been recently really good, but you still couldn't break through and win that championship. But you're not a joke, and you expect your team to be in the top 25 every year. So I think that's a fair comparison for kind of Oklahoma historically and Texas, where they kind of have been in recent years, especially under that Chris Beard years for Texas and the Rick Barnes years for Texas. So really, really good. All right, so Paraguay team I also left blank because they're not necessarily a good fit for anybody. I think if you're going to force someone to be here, it'd be LSU, Mississippi State, or Vanderbilt. And then finally, we got Costa Rica. You are not consistently, you're kind of consistently happy to make the tournament, but you really want something more. And there have been moments in your history that suggest that is possible. You've had some really good teams. You're not normally a top 25 team, but you're good at being a team nobody really wants to play because you can upset somebody, and it's really annoying for those bigger brands. And you got a relatively new coach who is getting settled in and is doing okay. Maybe they can be a huge positive change in your history and change the direct trajectory of your program. So Costa Rica, Mississippi State comparison. And there is some random stupid soccer knowledge that I have, and I hope everybody enjoys Copa America thinking that you write down, it's like Mississippi State is playing Tennessee today or something like that during that'd be really funny. But like, yeah, there's kind of a weird little comparison guide for anybody else who might be a soccer fan.
Maybe I'll watch a little bit of it, try and use these analogies to get into it. But for now, David, all you have done is get the Copacabana song stuck in my head for I don't know, it's been at least 6 hours by now.
The Copacabana song. So it's kind of unfair to recreate this moment, but the issue here was I had no idea what Maddie was talking about. And she made me listen to the song a little while ago before we recorded here. And yeah, I'd never heard that song in my life. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm not that big of a Barry Manilow fan, so
I'm not a Barry Manilow fan either. It's more like I think I heard it in like a movie. Feel like it's been played all across like mainstream.
is it
I
in
don't know.
Dirty Dancing? Like, I don't know.
I don't even know what it's from. I just know I've heard it like several times, and I don't specifically go search out Barry Manilow. So
No,
it's in something.
I mean, we're just got to solve this now. I'm now curious of what movies this is in. Okay, so it's in the movie Copacabana from 1985. Okay, that seems to be a big one. Um, let's see, anything else that like it's been featured in song in soundtrack. How part of a show where we're just Googling stuff. Man Wanted. Oh no, this is the Copacabana soundtrack. Barry Manilow's Copacabana is on there. Like obviously, I don't know.
It was in Goodfellas.
It was in Goodfellas. It was in Goodfellas. That's one of my favorite movies, and I don't even remember that song being in there. Left no impression on me.
Let's see. Okay. There's got to be another one
Gotta
because
be.
I love Goodfellas, but I know I've heard it more than that.
Gotta be something out there. Well, maybe some folks in the comment section could help us out and drop in where they know this song from. Which I know no Barry Manilow, so no Barry Manilow. I think I told you this before the break. When I played in my band in high school, we played in a very, very loud rock band. The kids, they're one of the kids is literally just screaming in the microphone. That kind of rock band. Very loud music, and the drummer's dad. We were practicing in their garage. The drummer's dad comes into the garage and goes, "I don't suppose you kids know any Barry Manilow, do you?"
Well, now you do, David.
I
Next,
know some now.
you can
Obviously, I don't know how to play it, but I definitely definitely know some Barry Manilow now. Oh my goodness! All right, hey, if you guys have not already subscribed, like to subscribe to the Hoop Southbound show, we greatly appreciate it. We always love having you guys here. Please hear your comments. Please understand the Copa America Cup guide is a joke, so kind of enjoy that joke a little bit. Everything else. But if you've not already liked and subscribed, please do. We greatly appreciate you guys being here. And everything else, or follow us anywhere that you get your podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere. You can find us. That way you can ride with us in the car on Spotify, Apple Play Podcast, whatever. We're out there. I think we're even on like Pocket Cast. I don't know the app. They're all over the place. But yeah, please like and subscribe. Follow us anywhere that you get your podcasts. We love having you here. Obviously, we're going to be talking about some more great stuff. My series, The Portal, is coming out next month, which I've already worked on. I just finished writing Alabama's today. We're going to go through these transfer portal classes and break those down. And of course, we're going to continue the show. And we have our NBA live show coming out on draft night for that first round. We're going to be talking through that as those picks come in, as kind of a side commentary while you watch ESPN. So that's what we're going to be hanging out doing. Obviously, I'm not anybody on ESPN, so there might be a couple of moments where I go, yeah, this is what I read about this guy. And that's going to be the analysis. But we'll be hanging out and talking really hardcore about those players that we do know, especially the ones from college basketball we're very familiar with, and kind of give a breakdown of what that player's been doing. So it'll be a fun night. We'll be here to interact with you guys on that one. So if you have any questions or just talking points you want us to talk about while during the draft, we'll bring them up. Like, we'll talk about it and hang out and have a good time. So we will see you guys next week, and we'll be talking more college basketball. Maddie?
thanks, guys. Hope you have a great week.
Absolutely. And actually, this week episode just started out there before I hit the end button. We are definitely going to be talking about next week. We're just kind of extending content because it's summertime. The ACC SEC challenge. We'll definitely be talking about those matchups that have been announced. So we'll catch you guys next week.